Welcome back to another episode of RecTalk. I'm your host, Nitin Sharma, the founder of RecTools.io. I'm not going to bore you today with who RecTools are and what we do and everything else, because you can watch other episodes for that. This episode is more important, I think. This will be out on a Mental Health Awareness Week, and as you know, that's a very important topic, especially in sort of 2024. My guest today here is to discuss. I'll start that bit again. My guest is Michelle Flynn, who's a certified mental health coach, a wellbeing coach. Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, what we're here to do is to kind of pull the veil back a little bit on kind of the difference between sort of health and wealth, and the importance of making sure that your own well-being is looked after, because you can't. If you're not well, then you can't be a high performer, right? There's a lot of kind of nuances to it. And we were looking for quotes and stuff to start this episode off. And I think the one that we both found kind of the funniest, but also most accurate, is by Henny Youngman. And that's, I've got all the money I'll ever need if I die by 4 o'clock. And I think this pursuit of wealth is kind of, certainly for me in the last sort of 12 months has been the changing point, right? Of kind of what is wealth? How do you define wealth, right? Yeah. Is it from the kind of the things you can hold and touch and feel? Yeah. And certainly since sort of focusing my own kind of career and plans on the businesses and the projects that I've got on now, it's freed up time, and that's been the most valuable thing. But you speak to people all the time about well-being, mental health, kind of supporting and coaching these guys through the changes of the world that we're in now. So what are you finding is the trend?
I think it's really interesting times around this space, because there sadly are still people who think that it's not important and that we don't need to think about it, and that work life and personal life is separate. And often it's not until they have a health scare or something goes on within their family that they actually sort of stand up and pay attention. But then we've got all the younger recruiters coming through, or not just recruiters, younger generation coming through, who are realising the importance of it, because they've come through the COVID era, they're listening to podcasts, they're reading books, they're hearing more of the messaging around wellbeing. So actually they're pushing it and saying we want to make changes. They're hearing what's going on in the world with a health crisis in the world, and that's the story that they're getting. So it's quite an interesting divide between sort of the people who absolutely get it and realise that it doesn't have to be 5 hours of yoga every day. It can be those small little things. And the people who still just go, no, it's not a thing, not interested.
Why do you think people are like that? Because there is a lot of that, right? In that they're just sort of non-believers, right?
Yeah.
Look, every kind of concept and theory and ideology has that. For everyone, for every group of people who believe in God, there's atheists. You know, for everybody who believes that the world is round, it's flat.
Yeah.
Is it a case that just sort of fundamentally some humans are wired just to kind of disagree with the cultural norm, or is there something more to it? Are these people perhaps they haven't had a traumatic enough experience for them to kind of be like, I need to reassess my life?
I think it's that. So I was one of those people. I spent my 20s working for Computer Futures. I spent my 30s working for a Microsoft Gold partner, set up my own recruitment business. I wasn't thinking about health. Yeah, I wanted to shift a few pounds every now and then, but I didn't think about...
There's more vanity reasons than...
No,
it is, right?
Completely,
yeah.
Absolutely. I didn't think about it. I was fortunate. I wasn't having any struggles. So it's a kind of a need-to-know basis. And then I had a health scare, and then was okay, so ignored the health scare, and then had a second health scare, and then was like, oh. Yeah. So I think for some people, they're really, really lucky and they've not had anything happen, so they don't need to think about it. They'll deal with it when they have to. But then for others, I think sometimes they don't want to face it because it can be shining a mirror in front of them and realising they have to make some change, and change is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a blend of what it is as to why people are not...
Do you think upbringing plays a part in it?
Oh, without a doubt.
You know what I mean? There's some people that... I mean, like my father-in-law was one of those where, his dad was a coal mine worker in Coventry. So steely, like, that kind of thing. And it's
Yeah.
ingrained into him, like, whether I'm feeling rough or not, whether I'm feeling ill or not, my arm's falling off, I don't care, I'm going into work.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've got, that's my responsibility.
Yeah.
And he kind of sees his daughters who kind of will call in sick when they're really not feeling right and that kind of thing, as sort of almost weak. Whereas on the contrast of that, you got someone like me who I have a health condition that I ignored for a very long period of time, because getting time off to go to doctor's appointments and blood tests and constantly going back and forth was almost a crime, to my old bosses and stuff.
Yeah.
And I really kind of resent that, because I probably could have picked up the health condition a lot earlier and made some real lifestyle changes. I may not have done, but that opportunity was taken away from me. So then when I set up the business and we started hiring staff, I'd say to them all the time, if you're ill, you're ill. If you've got a doctor's appointment, you go to it. If you've got a blood test, you go to it, right? Because your health is the thing that, like, money's not going to fix. You know what I mean?
And yet that is not the case for all business leaders. There are still people who can't take time off, can't go to that doctor's appointment because it's during work hours. Yeah. And it just eventually that will catch up with you. And in my case is that sort of I got so ill that it was impacting my ability to run my business. I had to make a change. Yeah. If I had been employed by someone at that point, that would have been costing that business a lot of money. So it's very short-sighted. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, Gen Z, I think, are fascinating in that they really have kind of got a completely different mindset to what the sort of millennials and Gen X had and have in the workforce, right? But then they get branded lazy. When they get branded, like, they're not ambitious and so on and so forth. You must get that. We're speaking to kind of business leaders. You must get that happen, like, kind of come up a lot, right? How do you deal with that? How are you coping? Or do you feel that they are?
I think, of course, there are always going to be some people that are lazy, no matter how old you are. Sort of, it's not just that generation. Yeah, it's got it in my generation.
No, absolutely, it's in my generation. But generally speaking, the sweeping statement is that no, Gen Z are lazy.
Oh God, completely. I hear it all the time. And actually, as a business leader, are you inspiring them? Are you understanding what's important to them, and are you motivating them in the right way? Because if you think that money is the only motivator and that's what you're pushing them on, but actually they care about being able to go and play football on a Thursday evening, or they care about being able to get to that doctor's appointment, you're pushing them on the wrong thing. It's the wrong kind of lever that you're pulling. So I think that we need to take responsibility for going, how are we motivating and training those younger people? And I know the whole work from home debate is that sort of we need to be spending time with the younger generations to give them those skills to make them our future generations sort of brilliant leaders.
Yeah. No, this is right. I think I found this firsthand. We had a hiring strategy for my recruitment business, which was to hire sort of trainees and build them up, right? Because me and my business partner kind of what we realised was that whilst we were very forward thinking in some cases, we also wanted people in the office because we couldn't work from home effectively because we were so easily distracted. We were like, no, and it's taken a journey for that as well. But so we were like, right, so do we attract? We're in Coventry, in the arse end of Coventry. Am I going to get a 300-500k a year biller? No, I'm not. Who's going to want to come to Coventry? Absolutely not. So actually, needs must. We consider ourselves good at sort of training and development. So we're like, right, let's go with the trainee model, and brought in a load of these junior consultants. And we ended up moving from an individual commission structure to a team commission format because we realised that they just didn't give a shit about the commission side of things, right? Yeah. Whereas, when we were on the tools, we would pick up a job or we'd get an interview request and we'd immediately go onto our commission calculator and be like, that's going to pay off Barclaycard, that can go in the holiday fund, or that's going to go in the deposit fund. Yeah. And you would start, I'd have all these little things like, I'm going to put so much in here, so much in here. Yeah. And then somebody called PAYE would take it all away from
Exactly. How do I get that job?
Yeah. Who is this bastard and why is he taking money out of my wages?
Yeah.
But like these guys just didn't care and then we ran a little kind of mini focus group in a team meeting, and we were like, right, guys, just be completely honest. What do you guys want when you perform well, and how do we kind of get the most out of it? And it was all individual stuff that was important to them. Yeah. Not as a collective, not as a group of an age group. Right? We had one person that was learning to drive. And she was like, to be honest with you, I have the money for driving lessons. However, I don't have the time because of this, 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 this. So she was like, what would really help me would be if I could do a driving lesson on a Tuesday and a Thursday morning where my driving instructors can't come to me until 8:30, which means that I could do my lesson but get dropped off into work for 9:30. Would that be okay? And we were like, yeah, that's cool.
Common sense.
But she was chuffed to bits with that because she was like, I can't ask them that. They're going to say no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there was another one that was like, oh, I really want to kind of go on holiday and I've got my holiday booked and this, that, and the other. But she's like, I want to get my hair done. I want to get the tan done. I want to get this done. I want to go shopping. I want to do all these things in like Birmingham in Resorts World and blah, blah, blah. So we incentivized her entirely around early finishes. So we were like, okay, for everything that you do with these sort of the key performance indicators and whatever, you can leave early. And actually, if you hit everything, you have Friday off. You just have Friday as your day.
Yeah.
And that meant so much more to her. But it took us ages to get to that point.
Yeah, because we just drive with the same thing that we all learnt back in our day, and it worked. Absolutely. In the Futures days, that was how we were motivated. But it is different. And the more we understand the values of our staff and what really matters to them, and it is not a one size fits all.
No.
That is and really hard for leaders because you have to know your people.
How do you, do you know what I mean? How do you effectively grow and scale a business and still be that entwined with the people and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I always found the whole concept within our industry of billing managers a funny one because yes, this person's a great biller. I've worked for some absolutely shocking people managers in recruitment. But at the same time, I've worked for a handful of really good managers who weren't the best recruiters, but really got the best out of me and the team. You know what I mean? But generally speaking, we have this kind of like, if you do really well and you hit these financial numbers, you'll be a manager. And then I can give you 2 trainees and you can get them to be versions of you.
Yeah. And
then that way I make more money. And it's sort of almost like, it doesn't work like that in football. It doesn't work like that in like racing. It doesn't work like that in any other team sport, right? You don't have player managers. So why do we do that here?
And I think that we need that because obviously we do need people that are going to manage, but it's about knowing that there are different career paths.
Yeah.
So I was promoted to a billing manager. I was terrible at it. I didn't like being sort of average at both roles. So I stepped back and just carried on billing and then stayed there for sort of another 6 years, making loads of money for the business and for me, winning. People need to know there are other opportunities. And just because someone asks you, here you go, here's your promotion, you can say, I actually don't know I want it yet.
Yeah.
That's not to say you might not want it a year or 2 years. I'm seeing
because we all evolve, don't we? We all evolve and we change, and what's important to us today isn't the same as tomorrow, right?
Completely.
No, it's a funny. I think there's a great awakening happening right now, isn't there? And you probably, in the world that you're in terms of well-being, you must be seeing that more than anywhere.
Yeah.
In the people are now all starting to value people being not just Gen Z, but kind of the millennials and Gen Xers are now starting to value time over money.
Yeah.
What do you think is driving that? And what kind of hints and tips have you got for someone who's maybe sat there going, I wish I could value time over money, but I have a mortgage to pay, I have mouths to feed, I have debts to clear.
And it's hard. Recruitment is hard at the moment. There isn't the money necessarily as readily available as it was. And you have got people going, I can't afford to get to the office. I can't afford to pay £3.80 for a coffee. And it's then them sort of looking at it and going, how much money am I going to need to actually ever think about buying my first home? And going, do you know what? I'm in my 20s. What's important is that I can finish work on time to sort of go and meet my friends, or I can phone in on a Monday morning and just go, do you know what? Just not today. Without having to give loads of reasons as to why, and sort of suddenly you're revealing all of your kind of deepest secrets when you really didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's that more understanding of what actually makes us happy. And I'm not saying that we don't want the nice stuff, but actually nice stuff and job titles aren't the thing that makes us happy. What makes us happy is having time to do the things that we want with the people that we love.
Yeah.
And even down to things like time to get enough sleep, time to exercise. Big one. that when people come to me, they're like, I love exercising. It's great for my physical and mental health. I no longer have time to do that. And we look at how do we make that work?
That must be quite a common one, because I know that is for me. Yeah. That is one of the things one of the excuses that I use, because it is an excuse, right? And you said a couple of things there which I want to come back to, but yeah, that must be a very common one. So kind of without giving away all your secrets, how do you break that down?
I think the first thing is we've got 24 hours in the day, and let's assume that you're sleeping for 7 to 9 of them, which not everyone obviously is. We take sleep out of it, we take your work time out of it. What are you spending that rest of the time doing? Because I don't have time is an excuse. We are busy, and I understand particularly people who are working US hours, that's a real challenge that's thrown in that we never had in our day.
No, that's true. Yeah. So we need to crack the US market now. We haven't done it in the UK, but they pay more.
Exactly. So then it's like, where does the exercise fit in? And I really look at people's day and go, where are those gaps? And actually, you tell me you haven't got time, but let's look at your screen time. And I'm not talking about your sort of work screen time. No. Let's look at how much time you've just spent scrolling. Because if you stop scrolling before bed and you got a good night's sleep, maybe you could get up earlier in the morning and you could do your exercise before you go to work. You feel good, you have a great work day, and suddenly we have a positive cycle.
But as a certified wellbeing coach, you would also accept, I would imagine, that certain people, not all, but certain people need that mental downtime to scroll and doom scroll and all that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
I come across this thing the other day, which I think spoke to me because I was in one of my lazy moods, and I was like, this makes sense. This makes so much sense to me.
Oh, go on, what is it?
It justifies my laziness. But productivity cycle, right? Where as humans, we kind of convince ourselves that unless I'm doing something, I'm not being productive, right? And then we punish ourselves, mentally or physically or both. We've punished ourselves with the kind of, you should have mowed the lawn, but you didn't. You could have painted those fences. You could have done this. You could have done that, but you didn't. Instead, you sat here watching TV. Yeah. And we almost like nag ourselves as to, my wife's going to come in and say all these things to me, and I'm going to start nagging myself about it now.
Yeah.
And this kind of the point this guy was making was like, what we don't seem to accept is that sometimes we need that. We need that. We're not doing nothing. What we're doing is recharging. What we're doing is going, how many times do we drive home from a long, hard day at work? And, those of us who've got kids will understand this. You park the car, you turn it off, everything's quiet, and you just go, and you tap the, I'm not going in yet. I'm not going in yet. Just not yet. I'm going to go. I'm going to do it, but just not yet. I need this me time for just a minute before I get bombarded with the daddy, right, baby, you done this, oh, daddy. Yeah. And so I was like, that kind of makes sense. We do need that, but we do give ourselves so much like shit for, you should have gone to the gym, but you didn't. And it's like, I could have gone to the gym, but I didn't. But do you know what? This was probably a better thing for me mentally.
And that's the difference between the shoulds and the coulds. Yeah, I should do this, I should do that. You're like, no, you could do. And absolutely, sometimes just a bit of scrolling where you don't have to think is lovely. But you've got to ask yourself the question afterwards is, was that the right use of my time for what I needed at that moment? And if it was, enjoy it.
Yeah, whereas, then I'm starting to sound like one of the arsehole managers that I used to hate, right? I'm like performance coaching myself. What could you have done differently today?
Yeah. But it's like going, are you spending 3 hours on TikTok before bed and therefore only getting 3 hours sleep? It's probably not the right use of your time.
But then I suppose you can further that out, right? Why are you spending 3 hours before bed on TikTok?
Yes, exactly.
What are you hiding from? What are you trying to divert your own attention away from? Because fundamentally, these things are being done as a kind of mental distraction from something else. Yeah. And understanding that is one thing, and then doing something about it is something completely different, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because again, like as shit as doom scrolling on TikTok is, there are times where I see something and I'm like, and that plays in my head all the time. So I have more lazy days than I probably should, right? In terms of on weekends and stuff like that. And then like the other day, we're all kind of lazing in bed on a Sunday, and I got up, went down to the kitchen, got all the stuff, and started cleaning the windows. And my wife said, "What are you doing?" Like, we're all chilling in bed, lying down. What happened? And I was like, I can't get out of my head that this TikTok that I watched, which was like, if it's only going to take 5 minutes, just fucking do it.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to feel so much better about it. And then you can go back to the lazy shit. Then you can go back to chilling out. It's only going to take you 5 minutes. You know, it's not that hard. You've got all the things. Just go down, do it, and go back and chill with the kids after that.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, man, these things like stick in my head. It's only going to take you 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Just fucking do it.
And it's a good thing, and you're learning, and growth is a big thing that I talk to people about, because often people are bored. They're not growing, they're not developing. So it's like, what is that? Is that books? Is it podcasts? Is it TikTok?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But have you just spent 3 hours looking at dogs in kind of UPS driver outfits? Probably not the best use. Or there's so much shit going on in the world. Are you watching stuff which is actually affecting your mental health?
Yeah.
And just switch it off. Like, I deleted the BBC app off my phone. Now I will choose to go and read the news when I want, instead of the app going, hey, come and look at me again.
Somebody else has been bombed. Look what's happened. Yeah,
exactly.
No, I get that. I think it's tough because we're in a... See, Gen Z have got the advantage of growing up with this sort of technology. We didn't. We've had to adapt to it, right? And so we remember a time where you could go to the toilet and not have something...
The good old days.
Yeah. Like, I was talking to my daughter about it the other day, and she was just like... and she's only like 7, but she's got an incredibly like weird imagination and stuff. And I was like, here's one for you, Angela. When you go to the toilet and, you know, you don't take your tablet or your switch with you, what would you do? And she went... I'd probably read the back of the toothpaste to see what ingredients are in it. And I was like, that's what we used to do. That's the weird shit that we used to do, right? And so they've got the advantage of kind of being ahead of the curve in that they have grown up with this sort of stuff, whereas we've had to adapt. And I think in adapting, it has distorted our kind of perceptions of what is the right thing to do, what is the wrong thing to do, you know? Do you know what I mean? And then that kind of feeds into leadership as well, then, because it's so much easier. And we're seeing it now where businesses have spent the last sort of 12 months, you know, most of 2022 and a lot of 2023 just delivering on recruitment, right?
Yeah.
Jobs were really easy to pick up. Candidates were scarce. You had a good candidate, you got an interview, you got on through the red tape, and you managed to make a fee.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's like, no. And jobs have slowed down, and candidates are harder to get hold of. And now business development is the forefront of everybody's focus.
Yeah.
Oh, we need to learn how to do BD again.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, in that scenario, now that's kind of the environment's created, you've got these leaders that are like going back to the way it used to work. You know what I mean? It worked for me back in 2019, having everyone in the office, having, you know, a designated number of calls that they had to make with a number of connections they had to get through and number of candidates they need to register and so on and so forth. And if we go back to that, we'll go back to the glory days. And I find that really fascinating, because that to me is more of a psychological thing than it is a kind of intelligence thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I love a KPI. I've got a maths degree. I like numbers. I like the data, and for me, that always worked because I knew exactly how many CVs I needed to send to get the 7 to 10 deals a month.
Mm-hmm.
But we also, it's about the micromanagement, and again, it's about that inspiring people. Do people understand that they're literally running their own business at that desk? Are they taking responsibility? Are they working smartly?
Well, we used to give a shit about that.
Yeah.
Whereas now people don't.
Mm.
So that's a tough way to manage then, isn't it? Because you're trying to get people to give a shit about something they have no vested interest or care or desire to give a shit about.
Yeah.
By and large.
Yeah.
Right?
Really tough.
So that changes kind of how you got to approach it.
Yeah.
And this is my point, is I think it's more than it's not a some of these leaders don't get it thing. I think it's more of a kind of trying to go back to the good old days because they don't know any other way.
And I think it is that. It's really difficult times and people are not knowing what to do. I'm seeing it all the time. It's like, just work harder, just make more calls. Are you making the right calls? Are they smart calls?
But numbers used to work, volume used to work,
Yeah.
and now it's not producing the results, and it's like, what do we do?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then, look, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. Recruitment agency insolvencies are at an all-time high for the 3rd year in a row. So there's clearly a trend that people are getting it wrong. You know what I mean? And so how much of your time then are you spending with the actual recruitment leaders and in supporting them in their mind shift change?
It's probably 50-50 really,
Yeah.
because I'll either be brought in by the leader to work with them, and then that's going really well, and then they get me doing some work with the team, and being able to look at the business as a whole and having a real knowledge of everybody in the team, what they want, what their drivers are, what their weaknesses are, how we work on those. Sometimes I get brought in to work with the team, and then the leader will go, "Oh, that's good. I want to do some of that."
How did you get all of them in the gym?
Exactly. What's going on?
Yeah.
Exactly. So it does vary. And sometimes I go in and I'll do a talk for Mental Health Awareness Week, and then people will sort of start to realise that they've got some areas that they need to work on. So it very much depends. I'm often brought in by the leader. The question is it for them personally, or is it because they're trying to support their team?
Yeah.
And what then becomes interesting is I'm a big believer in the leaders need to lead from the front. So is the leader buying in when I'm doing a talk? Are they there? Are they answering questions? Are they sharing their stories? And giving the sort of almost permission for the people in their team to go, yeah, actually, I'm having a bit of a hard time. And then suddenly you've got a very different relationship. And it is a tough one, because we also need to know that you are business sort of leaders and you are making money.
You're a commercial outfit, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So there is that, I understand that fine line between giving everyone all the support that they need, but also then it not becoming an excuse to never come into the office, or we can't push people too hard. But my view is, if you give your staff the tools that they need to cope with the stress, because it is stressful, to cope with anxiety, to get good sleep, all of those things, give them those tools, and then they're going to be able to cope with the pressures, and then they're going to have that resilience that when they've got a counter offer, then
so
they
it's
can
about
pick themselves
equipping
up.
them with the right tools.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rather than giving them the kind of the playbook of excuses.
Oh yeah.
Which is what a lot of, because you must get that, right?
Oh,
there are
all the
businesses
time.
out there that have a real thing about kind of, and not just businesses, there's people out there that fully kind of don't buy into this and really feel as though it's just an excuse culture. It's crabs in a bucket. They're kind of we as humans are our own worst enemy, because you get given an inch and then taken a mile kind of thing, right? And that does happen.
Of course it does.
So that must be quite challenging then, to sort of work with a leader and show them that actually, yes, you're always going to have one bad apple, two bad apples. That's going to happen.
And there's leaders that I don't necessarily have the same values. There's leaders that have spoken to me about, I've heard people have talked about the fact that they're unhappy at work with you. Of course, that's what the point of the confidential time with me is. They can talk about what's going on, and then I can support them to communicate to you about what the challenges are, and hopefully they fix it, or they might leave. And if they leave because they're not happy, that's the right thing for them and your business.
Yeah.
So it's almost this fear that leaders like, if we start digging in, what are we going to uncover? Better dealing with it now rather than you invest a load of money.
If you do the root cause analysis on that leader, this is a leader then who's probably more driven by vanity numbers, and therefore to grow and scale my business I need more people. The more people I have, the bigger my business looks on paper, and therefore the bigger, more of a success that I am.
Yeah.
And when you've got people that are worried about people leaving their business, that tends to be, when you root cause it, actually, fundamentally what we're dealing with here is somebody who thinks that success is by volume, not by other metrics, right?
Yeah. So you're always going to get that. And one thing, because often people are like, I don't get it, what do you do? And someone once said to me, they said, have you seen Billions? And I was like, no, what's that? They said, it's a box set. I was like, okay. They said, you're our Wendy. And I didn't know how to take that, because I was like, I've never seen it. And I went away and I watched it. And Wendy is the in-house performance coach at this hedge fund. And she basically just helps people with whatever's going on to be better, to then be able to maximise their career within Axe Capital, which is where it's all set around. And suddenly they're like, oh, this isn't fluffy stuff. And sometimes someone's going to come to me, they're going to have a cry, I'm going to give them a cuddle, and I'm going to send them out feeling better. Other times they're going to come to me with a load of excuses, and I'm going to say, that's an excuse. Let's see what we can do to actually stop you making those excuses and do what you need to do. So it can be both. I can be soft.
It's funny you mentioned the Billions piece. I was just thinking what I have noticed though is this is the positive impact of the Netflix generation, right? kind of the Americanized culture that we're in the UK at the moment has made sort of younger millennials and Gen Z a lot more open to having a therapist,
Oh yeah.
having somebody that they're openly talking to and being like, do you know what, I'm just going to trauma dump on you for a minute. Sit there, you're going to listen, and then hopefully you're going to be like, that's dumb, that's really good, do that.
Yeah.
Less of that, more of that. Right.
People love it, and they're putting. I had one of my clients the other day post out on LinkedIn a big post and connected to the fact and tagged me with the fact of, and thanks to my wonder coach Michelle Flynn for having the conversation to make me realise this. Like, we all know what we're meant to be doing, but we often don't actually give ourselves the time to find the answers.
Yeah.
And by me asking one question, then suddenly you're like, I've had quite a few people who work at home all the time on their own, maybe sole recruiters.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, when did you last put a suit on? When did you last go to London, Manchester, Leeds, wherever? When did you last go and have a business lunch, have a coffee with someone, get out of your house? And they're just like, oh, that's quite exciting. I'm like, that's going to help your mental health. That's also going to get you more business.
Yeah.
So it's being able to take that view of all of it and go, right, it is all connected. If you are at home on your own and you are lonely, you are not going to be doing well at your job.
Yeah. It's like, I can show you a video of somebody's life and you'll be able to sit there and be like, these are all the things that this person should change to do it.
Yeah.
I could show you a video of your life, under the guise of somebody else, and you'd be able to effectively be like, these things need to change.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we can't do it when we're in the weeds. It's funny. I had exactly this thought this morning. I've gone from running a recruitment business, which was office-based with staff and all the rest of it, for sort of nearly 7 years, to now I'm working from home. And I've got a good friend of mine who's like, look, come into the office whenever you want. They've got an office, they're a tech business. And I'm like, it's just nice to, like, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it and I was like, it's been 3 weeks since I last went into his office. Because every single time that I go to do it, I go, fuck it, it's a hassle.
It's too hard.
Yeah, I can't bother. I'll just go, I've left this at home. I should probably go home first and go and grab that. Or did I do, and then I'm like, so I'm doing this to myself. I need to stop doing this. I need to go and just make the effort, because if nothing more, it gives me somebody else to talk to and interact with, and then we'll throw ideas around and I'll go, I can validate something that I'm thinking or feeling. I can get their opinion on stuff. In actual fact, I could be useful to them as well.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise this until recently, because I never did the whole work from home thing.
Yeah. But I'll say to someone, if they're looking unsure, I'm like, if your friend came to you and they were in your situation, what advice would you give them? And they're like, well, I would tell them that they need to do this, this, and this. I'm like, okay,
so I can do it then.
There we go. Because we do know, but we're just so busy. And that moment in our day when we have that downtime, we're queuing for the coffee, we're stuck in traffic, we pick the phone up. And that was when those precious moments when we used to find the answers.
Yeah.
And now we don't have that.
Yeah. I think that's so important. Yeah, we fill the void, don't we?
Completely. And as you're saying about the Netflix generation, things like they're now sort of seeing, oh, look, people do focus on doing some exercise, or, oh, men do yoga, or, oh, that breath work thing, that works. And you're like, yes, we're now starting to realise all the basic stuff, like health is not complicated. It is eat real food, move your body, make sleep a priority, breathe properly, and have some good people in your life.
The amazing thing, though, is that all of these channels that historically, as kind of Gen X and millennials that we used to complain about, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Facebooks and that kind of thing, they're now starting to promote exactly all of this stuff as well. There are a lot of influencers in that sort of well-being space, in the fitness space. There's a lot of people who will share kind of successes and that kind of thing, clean eating and healthy eating recipes, all of those things are readily available on the media that sort of most of us use on a daily basis now.
Yeah.
And I think that's really key, is to kind of like, we don't have to go back to the way that things were.
Yeah.
Actually, we can amend the way that things are to make them better.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important, especially within the recruitment industry, because we're in this sort of genesis at the moment where you've got, and this isn't an age thing, this is a mentality thing, that you've got the old guard who think getting back in the office, slamming the phones, dial out more, speak to more people, you'll make more business is the answer. And then you've got this new guard that are like, no, there's, content, assets, value add, people buy in a different way now. We need to engage with people in a different manner. Yeah. There's more than one way to kind of get in front of people now. And there's better ways to get in front of a multitude of different buyers than constantly ringing people one by one off a list. And they're almost like at loggerheads at the minute, right? That must play then into kind of people's well-being and mentality, because there'll be people that are of the new guard working for the old guard. Yeah. Or the old guard working for businesses within the new guard. And you get kind of a better look at that than anybody. So what's your advice to those people? If somebody sat there now going like, my boss just doesn't get it. I feel like they just don't get it.
And sometimes you have to do what the boss says to show them that it hasn't worked, and now can I try my way to show you that it does work?
Yeah.
We do have to also look at the sort of the old guard have got a lot of experience, and there's a lot of things they're really good at. Relationship building. That was so key back then because we didn't have all the different methods and technologies. Yeah. But nowadays there's the technologies where you can phone 200 people all at once. So suddenly you can be doing the dials that I would have done in a day in 5 minutes and getting the person that answers. So it's what was good then, what's good now, how do we merge those things? What was less good back then and what was less good now?
How do we improve that? Yeah.
So it's how we improve it, and accepting that we've all got knowledge to bring to the table, but we've also got the experiences that didn't work. And let's put our hands up and go, that didn't used to work back then, or that's not working now. So what are we going to do different? Instead of it's just my way, I don't want to hear what anyone else says. Well, hang on, because you bring you meet a 19-year-old recruiter who's just started, and suddenly they're very knowledgeable in social media, more so than maybe someone who's older, who hasn't been brought up in that generation, doesn't feel comfortable sharing stories about themselves. So it's like, let's look at your team and go, who's got what strengths, and use them.
Leveraging people in the right manner, right? Yeah.
Because what happens is we spend so much time trying to sort of strengthen the weaknesses that we weaken the strengths.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are all our strengths? And let's use those. And if you're someone like, marketing now is such a big thing that recruiters are finally realising that they need to invest in marketing. If you're not comfortable on the screen, that's fine. Go and talk to everyone else. I was, when I was a recruitment manager for a Microsoft Gold partner, I used to write a blog about outside the job spec. What awards are we winning? What social are we going on? I used to get all the technical people giving me information. And I won an award from Computer Weekly for that. That wasn't because I was sort of brilliant at technology. I was using the people.
Yeah.
So who are your people that do enjoy putting stuff out there? And if someone hates it, don't be just trying to force them to put content out on LinkedIn, or teach them different ways that they can do it that will make them more comfortable. So we've got to look at who.
We have a lot of that in recruitment, don't we? Where we try and get everybody to have a similar skill set.
Yeah.
And almost suppress the kind of the standout skills that certain people have.
Yeah.
I had it in my own business. I had a guy who was very, very good at finding extremely niche candidates who were very senior and kind of not worming his way in sounds really negative, but like he'd get them on site and get right representation, and then he'd be able to take them and spec them into really, really niche clients who would then be like, holy shit, this is a great candidate. I want to pay you an arm and a leg for that. Thank you for the introduction.
Yeah.
And my old business partner would be like, he needs to post more on LinkedIn. He needs to make more dials out. He needs to broaden his business development skills, and he needs to spend less time messaging on LinkedIn. And I was like, why?
Yeah.
The other people are doing this, and this, and look how much money they're making. He could make double the amount. And I'm like, but he's making more than what loads of these are anyway.
Yeah.
Why don't you just leave him to do what he's good at, rather than trying to upskill him against his will in things that he doesn't want to do? Why don't we encourage more of the things that he is doing that are working? Pull him away from the stuff that isn't working and kind of see if we can refocus that. Because we've got other people who are really good on camera.
Yeah.
So why don't we get them downstairs? We had a podcast studio at the time, right downstairs in the office. Get them on set downstairs and get them doing mini podcasts, Q&A sessions, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's use that to our advantage.
Oh,
and we would be at loggerheads all the time because it would just be like, no, no, this guy needs to be doing more BD. And then he'd make him do BD calls, and he'd listen into his BD calls, and then he'd give him feedback. And bless him, Tom would look at me and he'd just sort of roll his eyes to be like, what can I do here, mate? What do I say?
Yeah.
Like, you know. And I just feel like that's where a lot of our recruitment leaders are going to feel the strain, because for every kind of old school recruitment business there is out there, there are the likes of, and I will name drop them because I've got a lot of respect for them. There are people like Alex Dick, and there are people like Karen Sohal, who have looked at what works and trends and all that sort of stuff, and have built their entire business model around, okay, if remote is what people want, then I'll give them remote. If automation technology is what people want, then we'll invest in that. If LinkedIn Recruiter is more important than a CV library license, then that's what we'll pay for. But I'll give you all the tools and now I expect the results back, right?
Yeah.
And their businesses are doing incredibly well, versus an industry where insolvencies are on the rise, like we said, year on year, and businesses are struggling because they've moved with the times. And it's sad to see, because I put that down to a well-being thing, right? When you are under the cosh financially, we're all experiencing this, not only increasing cost of living, but this sort of, our generations went from, we bought this house and then we did this, and we are over mortgaged. We have most things on finance, and we are incredibly reliant on that monthly thing that we call a salary.
Yeah.
And the minute that tap turns off or dries up for even a period of time, we're sort of, most people our generation are like 3 missed paychecks away from kind of significant issues.
Yeah.
And I think though that personal finance situation that a lot of our recruitment business owners of our generation are in is what's driving this mentality of, I need quick wins, I need them on the phones, I need them doing the things that I know used to work, not things that could work, because I don't want to roll the dice. I can't afford to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that's a big well-being thing, really.
Well, it is, because when we're highly stressed, which ultimately, of course, they are, you've suddenly scaled, you've got a massive big office because you thought that you were going to have all these people that you were going to hire into it, and now that hasn't been the case, and now you're paying for this big office, and I get it. It's very soon that cash is going to go. You leverage
a load of debt during COVID to keep the doors open, and that you can't service that debt. Yeah.
Particularly if you're a perm business and you don't have a strong contract book, and then the leaders are so stressed, their stress hormones are literally through the roof. I can see it. People walk in to see me and I'm like, oh God, okay, you're clearly really struggling, because literally the adrenaline is flowing, and not in a good way.
No.
And the part of the brain that helps us think rationally switches off.
Yeah.
So you can't find the answers. So it's like, we need to get you calm. We need to get you rebalanced. The part of the brain then switches back on, and then you get the answers.
You can find the route.
Yeah. But it's that whole caveman thing with sort of like the square wheel. And they're like, no, I'm too busy, as a person with a round wheel is running behind them. And that's often the case. I'm too busy to try and make any change. And it's like that sort of definition of insanity. We're just doing the same thing over and over.
Expecting a different result. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, stop, check in, what's going on? How do you calm your body down so that you can suddenly go, right, this is what we need to do.
I think there's a kind of love yourself piece within that as well, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the I had a tough time sort of towards the end of 2023, where the the recruitment business has struggled, and we've had to close down, I've had to let staff go, and all that sort of stuff. And my confidence was on the floor at the start of this year.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until a friend of mine kind of pulled me to the side, and he was sort of like, just look at what you did do, and like it was important for me, because it sort of rings out all the time, and that success isn't final and failure is not fatal, right? And it's very easy to kind of understand that until you live it. You're like, okay, yeah, I get this now, and so I think it was at a point where he was kind of like, you just need to remember who the fuck you are. Like, you took a risk and set up a business, right? And had 6-7 really good years, and things were great. Enjoy that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sort of at that time where you were kind of reluctant to do the changes and reluctant to kind of roll the dice again, you should have just backed yourself and been like, well, I rolled the dice 6 or 7 years ago, and look where it got me, right?
Yeah.
Just do it again, right? And there's a lot of recruitment business owners, because I speak to sort of a lot of the startup guys, and they're all kind of just coming off this sort of like, they've rolled the dice and they've gambled on themselves. And maybe the first 6 months haven't gone the way they wanted them to. And it's like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, just roll the dice again. What's the worst that's going to happen?
And that's the question. But also, what's the best that could happen?
Yeah. Yeah. Why are you so afraid of success?
Yeah. And it is, because we have this fear, and fear is the thing that just stops us doing everything. And we often think it's fear of failure. Often it's fear of success. The reason I never grew a recruitment business beyond me and my friend was that I was worried, because I knew I'd be good, but actually, oh no, what if I then have to hire people and I have to think about cash flow and forecasting, and maybe I have to have an office? And I just went, okay, won't do that. And I look now at all the sort of successful people that I worked with that have grown businesses.
Cohort. Yeah.
I'm like, that could have been me.
Yeah.
And it was all about the fear of success. And we go, how do we get beyond that fear? And it's that sort of comfort zone that we all sat in COVID in our pajamas, and we're like, oh, this is nice at home. That's not where the fun happens. The growth happens when you take the risks.
Yeah.
But also, you've got to put your oxygen mask on yourself first to be able to take the risks. Mm-hmm. Because if you're going to be pushing yourself as hard as you can, because that's what it takes to run a successful business, you have to make sure that you have got that. We talked about the hierarchy of needs. Yeah. What are the foundations? Because if you haven't got the foundations, forget it.
But also, what are you defining as success, though, right?
And that's an individual thing. For some people, that's time with family. For others, it is financial. For others, it's being as healthy as they can be. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, it all comes down to being happy. You want to be financially stable. Why? To be happy. You want to be in great physical shape. Why? Oh, to be happy. So we've got to go, what makes people happy?
Yeah.
And that's what people miss. And they're like, why is it that I'm highly successful, making all this money, and yet I'm not happy? I'm like, because you're forgetting the stuff that really matters. You may have all of this money, but have you spent any time with your kids? Or you might have the best car, but have you actually got any time to yourself? And the ideal is we have all of it. And don't we just think that we can have everything? And then you realise that, can you or can't you? I don't know. There are some people who have everything, but...
I have a theory on this. It's never enough.
It's never enough.
Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Richard Branson, they all still get up every day and still go and strive for more money, right? Why?
Yeah.
They got infinite amounts of money, generational wealth, but for some reason it's not enough, right? And if it ain't enough for them, I can fucking tell you now, it ain't gonna be enough for you, right?
Yeah.
I could give you, we say this all the time, right? You could win £10 million on the lottery. You're now going to start hanging out in a different circle of people for whatever reason.
Yeah.
There's going to be people, you're still going to be the poorest person in the room. In a room. You'll walk into a room where, you got 10 mil, is that it? Oh, we've got 100 mil John over there, we've got 200 mil Becky over there.
Yeah.
You're now the poorest person in the room with the biggest, of like a lot more wealth, accumulative wealth, right? It's never enough. But for some reason, we're on this constant hamster wheel of like, no, because we've all done it, right? My first job was in mobile phone sales. And at the time, I'd be like, if I can just get to 18 grand a year, then I'll be able to do this, and I'll be able to do that, and I'll be able to do this, and I'll be able to save this much. Then you get to 18 grand a year, and it's like, okay, no, hang on, that didn't work out. If I can just get to 25 grand a year, and then I move into retail banking. And if I can just get to retail, if I can get to bank manager, then I'll be able to be on 35 grand a year, and I can bank like 20 of that, because I'm good at living on this much. And then you get to that point, you're like, if I could just get to 40 grand a year, because it is never enough. But for some reason, we don't want to kind of accept that it doesn't matter how much money I earn, I'm still going to want and strive for more. So maybe I need to, maybe that's not the kind of the answer. You know what I mean?
And I always thought my driver in my mind was always money. And certainly my old boss at Futures would say very, very money motivated, wanted to buy my first flat, be financially secure, which absolutely was true.
That was the motivation.
It wasn't.
Money was the vehicle. The destination was the financial security piece, right?
No.
No? You don't want that either, right?
I did. And I definitely thought it was that. And I got to where I wanted to, and then I changed jobs. But now, having reflected on it, it wasn't that. I wanted to make my dad proud. And what was going to make my dad proud was going, look at my lovely flat, Dad. Oh, look at the fact of what I've done with the mortgage. Mm-hmm. That's what mattered. And by really drilling in on that, and when I do my mojo talks for teams, it's like, what's your why? The whole Simon Sinek stuff.
Yeah.
What actually matters? Because if you know in your team what matters with each of those people, and that's when I'm coaching people, I'm understanding what matters, then you know how to drive them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we get stuck in that we're too busy, we're too stressed, we can't think straight, and we just don't make.
We get stuck in the day-to-day, right?
Yeah,
the day-to-day
exactly.
stops us from achieving, I think.
Completely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's a great place to end this on. Is the why? Yeah, yeah. So
What's yours?
What's mine?
Yeah.
My why is my kids.
Yeah.
That is well, yeah. No, I always say my girls because that's not just my girls, but as in my kids, but my wife as well. Right.
Yeah.
That's my why. You know, the more time I can spend with them, the more I can be around with them. That's all I want.
And I think when
The
you
money
get
will
to
come.
the point
Yeah.
that you have family, it becomes obvious. Whereas when you're younger and you're in your 20s, often they'll sit and they'll look at me like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's like, okay, what is it? What's going to get this person out of bed every morning to do a hard job?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's really focusing
it's
on
funny,
that.
yeah, it's funny you say that because if you're the last 23-year-old me, what's your why? I don't have kids at the time, right?
Yeah.
But it would have been family. It would, like the only constant in my life, and I've had every job you can think of, every car you can imagine, every hairstyle you can think of, right? The only constant in my life has always been that I want to settle down, I want to have kids, I want to have a family, and I want to do all the things that my dad didn't do when I was, I want to be a good dad. Do you know what I mean? And that was it. It was I want to be a good dad.
Yeah.
Because mine wasn't great. You know, Joe?
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to accept that and understand that. But that was my driver.
Yeah.
Okay, how do I do that? Well, I've got to be there. Okay, what stopped Dad from being a good dad? Well, he never came to anything. Okay, so you can go to things. How are you going to do that? Well, I've got to work for myself then. I'm not asking for permission to go to my kids' school play.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for permission to leave early or come in late so I can drop my kids off to school.
Yeah.
Like, no one's stopping me from doing that. So I have to work for myself. And every kind of career decision that was made following that was based around entirely that concept of you got to be a good dad.
Yeah.
You have to be.
Yeah. And one of the things I do with people when they're in a transition phase and they don't know what to do next is I go, right, what are your top 3 work values? Mm-hmm. So, for example, mine, flexibility, connection to people, and money. Okay, how do we prioritize those? So I get people to allocate, we've got 10 coins, you're going to allocate those 10 coins across those 3 things. So 4-4-2 as an example. Right, that's the ideal. What does now look like? Actually, I make loads of money, but I haven't got any flexibility. Yeah. Okay. If you did this thing, you took the promotion, what would that look like? If you took a new job, what would that look like? And actually to get people to go, what really matters? And for businesses, when you understand what really matters, as you're saying, for you, all you wanted to do was to be able to make sure you could spend time with your family.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if it's another 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand. I don't want it.
That was irrelevant. Yeah.
Irrelevant. And it's when you really dig into that with people, that's where you suddenly get that power, because then you're like, now you know how to have the right conversations.
Yeah.
And that can be trying to understand someone better. And one of the biggest questions that when I'm speaking to people is like, tell me about your past. We've all got pasts. And it's like, what has that done to lead you to where you are today? Yeah. And how do you take your past and use that as your strength for your future?
Yeah. Leverage the experiences that you've had rather than blame them or... Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like you are who you are. You are the amazing person that you are because of what you went through.
But then, then you got some people who don't feel like they're amazing people because of what they've been through. And that's a whole other piece. And actually having somebody like yourself to be able to do that unpicking, because as a business owner, as a business leader, this person is under a lot of stress and strain and pressure of steering the ship. Yeah. And they haven't got the time to be the kind of the mother hen of the group or the agony aunt of the group or whatever.
Yeah, and they shouldn't be. They should be leading the business.
Both those analogies are women, but like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So you've got to kind of, accept that actually this is a good way to do it. Okay.
And this is where the sort of fractional is becoming such a big thing, is bring in the experts. You had Natasha on, she's a master in the ops space.
Amazing.
Chris O'Connell, like brilliant, talking about business development. It's like, bring in the experts so that as the CEO of the business, you can be running your business.
Yeah.
And you've got your right ops team in place in your business. And if
you're being propped up by the right people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, by professionals who know what they're doing, who can support you in achieving your why.
Yeah, and some of those will be internal people on your team, and others will be the external that you plug in as and when you need them.
Push them in, yeah. There you go. This has been really insightful. We've gone on slightly longer than I wanted it to, but it's been really good. It's been really insightful. There's a chance to plug. What have you got going on? How do people get in touch with you? Get you into their business to
what do I do?
Make them cry.
I do make them laugh too. So you can contact me on LinkedIn, or my website is michelleflynncoaching.com. I might be the emergency call if you've got someone that you're worried about, or if you're struggling. It could be that I'm that employee assistance program where your team actually know who they're going to be talking to, and also I understand the industry and I get to know the team. It might be a one-off talk around Mental Health Awareness Week or Stress Awareness Month. The aim is just give me a shout, tell me what struggles you've got in your business, and we can come up with something that's going to help make your team better.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
That was almost rehearsed.
Almost like I've done it before.
Yeah, that's it. Right, no, this is fantastic. Thank you so much. And thanks for listening in once again for anybody who is still listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, that was good.
Right, get that stop bit.